The smell of roasted turkey filled the dining room of my parents' lavish Westchester home as I sat quietly at the far end of the mahogany table. 23 family members surrounded the massive spread. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and my immediate family all chatting about their recent vacations, new cars, and business deals. To them, I was just Maya, the 29-year-old struggling artist, who lived in a modest apartment in Queens. "Maya, honey, are you still doing that little photography thing?" Aunt Linda asked with a patronizing smile, cutting into her prime rib. "When are you going to get a real job?" Before I could answer, my older brother Derek jumped in. "She's been finding herself for 5 years now. Some of us have actual responsibilities." He gestured toward his wife Jessica and their 2 kids. "I've got a family to support, a mortgage, college funds to think about." My parents nodded approvingly. Dad, Richard Blackwell, owned 3 successful car dealerships across New York. At 58, he was used to being the patriarch who controlled everything and everyone. Mom, Patricia, spent her days at charity galas and country club luncheons, always dressed in designer outfits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Speaking of responsibilities," Dad said, setting down his wine glass with authority. The entire table grew quiet. "Patricia and I have been discussing Maya's situation." My stomach tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. I'd learned long ago not to react to family drama. "We've been supporting her lifestyle for far too long," Dad continued, his voice carrying that boardroom tone he used when making business decisions. "The monthly allowance, the apartment rent, the car payments, it's time for tough love." "Richard, maybe we should discuss this privately," Mom whispered, glancing around the table at all the watching faces. "No, Patricia. Maya needs to hear this, and frankly, everyone here needs to understand that we're not running a charity." Dad stood up, his 6 feet 2 inches frame casting a shadow across the table. "Maya, we're cutting you off financially. Effective immediately. It's time to grow up and take responsibility for your life." The room fell silent except for the soft clinking of silverware. My cousin Mark smirked into his mashed potatoes. Aunt Linda raised her eyebrows with interest. My teenage cousin Sophie looked genuinely sorry for me. "You're 29 years old," Dad continued. "Derek was married and running his own business by your age. Your cousin Michael just bought his second house. What do you have to show for yourself? A few photos on Instagram." I took a slow sip of my water, processing his words. The irony was almost too perfect. Here was my father, lecturing me about financial responsibility, while sitting in a house I'd purchased through a shell company 3 years ago when he was facing bankruptcy from his failed casino investments. The same man who drove a BMW I'd bought him for his birthday, though he thought it came from Mom. The same family eating a Thanksgiving dinner I'd paid for through carefully disguised transactions. "I understand," I said quietly, setting down my glass. "Good," Dad said, his tone softening slightly. "This isn't about punishment, sweetheart. It's about helping you become independent. We've enabled you too long." Derek leaned back in his chair, looking satisfied. "Maybe now you'll finally get serious about a career. I could probably get you an entry-level position at my firm. Receptionist work, filing, nothing glamorous, but it's honest work." "That's very kind of you to offer," I replied, standing up from the table. "I think I should head home now. Thank you for dinner." Mom looked concerned. "Maya, honey, you don't have to leave. We can discuss this as a family." "No, it's fine. Really." I grabbed my purse and coat from the foyer. "I need to process this news." As I walked toward the door, I heard Dad's voice behind me. "This is for your own good, Maya. You'll thank us someday." I paused at the front door, my hand on the brass handle. "I'm sure I will." The November air was crisp as I walked to my car, a modest Honda Civic that I'd specifically chosen to maintain my cover. As I drove through the winding roads of their exclusive neighborhood, I couldn't help but smile. If only they knew that every house I passed, every streetlight, every perfectly manicured lawn existed because I'd secretly purchased and developed this entire subdivision through my company, Meridian Holdings. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Don't take it personally. Dad's just trying to motivate you. Maybe this is the push you needed." I pulled into my apartment complex in Queens, another property I owned, though my family believed I was just another struggling tenant. The modest building housed 12 units, and every month I collected rent checks from 11 other tenants while pretending to struggle with my own payments. Inside my deliberately sparse apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at my computer. The screen displayed my real net worth, $847 million. My photography business was just the tip of the iceberg. Over the past 8 years, I'd built a financial empire spanning real estate, tech startups, and strategic investments. The cameras were my passion, but business was my talent. I opened my encrypted files and began reviewing the accounts. For 3 years, I'd been the invisible hand keeping my family's lifestyle afloat. Dad's car dealerships had been hemorrhaging money since 2019, but mysterious cash injections had kept them solvent. Mom's charity work looked impressive, but the generous donations that made her look philanthropic came from my anonymous contributions. Derek's successful consulting firms survived on contracts I'd arranged through my network. Even their daily expenses ran through accounts I controlled. Dad's corporate credit card was backed by my shell company. Mom's shopping sprees were funded by an account I'd established in her name. Derek's mortgage payments were automatically covered by a trust I'd created, though he thought his business income paid for everything. My phone rang. Dad's contact photo filled the screen. "Maya, I hope you understand that dinner wasn't personal," he said when I answered. "Your mother's worried about how you took the news." "I'm fine, Dad. Actually, I've been thinking about what you said. You're absolutely right." "Oh, well, good. I'm glad you see it that way." "I do. In fact, I think it's time I took complete control of my finances. All of them." That's exactly the attitude we want to see. Independence, responsibility. Starting Monday morning, I'm going to make some significant changes. "Excellent. And Maya, we love you. This really is for your own good." After he hung up, I spent the next hour making phone calls. First to my financial advisor, then to my corporate attorneys, then to the executives at my various holding companies. By midnight, everything was in place. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. I was reviewing quarterly reports from my tech investments when my phone started buzzing. The first call came at 9:47 a.m. "Maya, there's some kind of mistake with my credit card." Mom's voice was strained. "They're saying it's been canceled, but I was just using it yesterday." "That's strange, Mom. Have you called the bank?" "I called and they said the account was closed by the primary account holder." "But your father opened that account." "Actually, I had opened it, but saying so would ruin the surprise. Maybe there's been some kind of identity theft? You should probably check all your accounts." The second call came 20 minutes later. Derek, his voice tight with panic. "Maya, something's wrong with my business accounts. 3 different cards have been declined this morning. I'm supposed to close a major deal today, and my bank is saying the accounts don't exist." "That sounds serious, Derek. Have you called Dad? Maybe he can help with his business connections." I tried calling him, but he's dealing with his own problems. Apparently, all the dealership accounts have been frozen. By noon, my phone had buzzed with 17 different calls and text messages. The family WhatsApp group was exploding with confused messages. "Dad, bank says our accounts have been compromised. Working with fraud department." "Derek, same here. 3 business accounts locked." "Mom, girls' lunch is canceled. My cards aren't working." "Aunt Linda, is anyone else having banking issues? My investment account is showing 0 balance." "Uncle Mike, what the hell is going on? My credit line has been suspended." I let them spiral for a few hours before sending a single message to the group. "Having some technical issues with my photography client payments too. Banks are probably updating their systems. Should be resolved soon." The truth was far more complex. I hadn't actually closed their accounts. I'd simply revoked my backing of them. Dad's dealership accounts appeared frozen because the hidden credit lines I'd established were no longer available. Derek's business cards stopped working because the corporate guarantees I'd secretly provided had been withdrawn. Mom's shopping accounts were suspended because the trust fund I'd created to support them was now inaccessible. None of them had lost any money that was actually theirs. They'd simply lost access to money that had always been mine. Tuesday brought escalation. Dad called an emergency family meeting at the house. When I arrived, I found them gathered in the living room looking haggard and confused. Derek was pacing, his usual confidence replaced by visible stress. Mom sat clutching a cup of coffee, her perfect makeup slightly smudged. Even the house felt different. The heat had been turned down, and the usual abundance of fresh flowers was notably absent. "Thank God you're here, Maya. Dad said as I entered. We're dealing with a family crisis. What kind of crisis? Some kind of coordinated financial attack, Derek explained, running his hands through his hair. It's like someone with serious resources has targeted our entire family. That sounds paranoid, Derek. Is it? Maya, every single one of us has had accounts frozen, credit lines suspended, or business deals fall through, all in the same 48-hour period. That's not coincidence. Dad nodded grimly. I've been in business for 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. It's like someone flipped a switch and all our financial infrastructure disappeared. Have you contacted the police? I asked, settling into the armchair that I knew I'd purchased along with everything else in the room. We tried, Mom said quietly. They said without evidence of actual theft, it's a civil matter. The banks keep saying the accounts were closed by authorized parties, but none of us authorized anything. Uncle Mike, who'd driven in from Connecticut, looked exhausted. Maya, I hate to ask this, especially given your own situation, but do you have any contacts in the financial world? Anyone who might help us understand what's happening? The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me, their struggling family member who lived in Queens and took pictures for pocket change. They were asking for my help with a financial crisis worth millions of dollars. I might know someone, I said carefully. Let me make some calls. I stepped out onto the patio and pulled out my phone. Instead of calling anyone, I spent 10 minutes reviewing my stock portfolio performance and checking emails from my property managers. When I returned, their hopeful faces made me almost feel guilty. Good news, I announced. I spoke with a financial consultant I know. She says this kind of situation usually involves someone with significant insider knowledge and resources. Insider knowledge? Dad's face darkened. You mean someone who knows our family's financial details? Someone who's been watching your spending patterns, your account structures, your business relationships. Someone who understands exactly how your finances are interconnected. Derek stopped pacing. Maya, that's terrifying. Who would have that kind of access to our private information? I let the question hang in the air for a moment. Then I walked to the center of the room and pulled out my phone. Someone like me. The confused silence stretched for several seconds. Maya, what are you talking about? Mom asked softly. I opened my banking app and held up the screen showing my account balance. The numbers were large enough to read from across the room. $847,346,982. Dad squinted at the phone, then looked at me with bewilderment. Maya, that can't be real. That's some kind of app error. No error, Dad. I opened another app showing my real estate holdings, then another displaying my business portfolio. For the past 3 years, I've been the one funding your lifestyle. Your house, your cars, your business accounts, your credit lines, all of it has been supported by my money. Derek laughed, but it sounded forced. Maya, that's impossible. You take pictures for a living. You live in Queens. I live in Queens because I own the building and 12 others like it. I take pictures because I enjoy it, not because I need the money. I scrolled through my phone and showed them a property deed. This house you're sitting in, I bought it through Meridian Holdings when Dad's casino investments went bad in 2020. The color drained from Dad's face. That's not possible. I never sold this house. You didn't sell it. The bank was going to foreclose, so I purchased the mortgage and the property through a shell company. You've been living here as my tenant for 3 years. Mom set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. Maya, honey, I don't understand what you're saying. I sat down on the couch across from them. My couch in my house, speaking to my tenants. Let me explain it simply. 3 years ago, Dad's investments in the Native Sun Casino venture cost him everything. The dealerships were bleeding money, this house was in foreclosure, and Derek's consulting business was about to collapse. Instead of letting you lose everything, I stepped in. That's impossible, Derek insisted. My business has been profitable for years. Your business has been surviving on contracts I arranged through my network. The Morrison account that keeps your firm afloat. I'm Morrison Industries' primary investor. The Westfield development deal that made you look like a genius? I own Westfield Development. I pulled up documents on my phone and passed it around the room. Property deeds, corporate filings, bank statements. All bearing my name or my company's names. Dad, your BMW? I bought it for your birthday and had it delivered with a card saying it was from Mom. The renovations to your dealership showrooms? Funded through a business improvement loan that I guaranteed. Mom, your charity work looks so generous because I've been making anonymous donations that you then take credit for distributing. Uncle Mike was staring at the documents with his mouth open. Maya, these filings show you own half of Westchester County. Not half. About 37%. Including this entire subdivision. The room fell completely silent. Outside, I could hear the neighbor's lawn service working, employees of the landscaping company I'd acquired 2 years ago to maintain the property values in my neighborhoods. Dad finally found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. Why? Why would you do this? Because you're my family and I love you. But also because I wanted to prove something to myself. Prove what? That I could build something real. Something significant. While you all dismissed me as the family failure, I was creating a business empire. While you felt sorry for your poor little sister living in Queens, I was buying and developing properties across 3 states. While you worried about my future, I was securing all of yours. Derek was looking at his hands. The emergency loan that saved my business last year came from my investment fund. I've been your anonymous guardian angel for 3 years. But why hide it? Mom asked, tears forming in her eyes. Why let us think you were struggling? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the manicured landscape that my property management company maintained. Because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought I had nothing to offer. I wanted to understand whether your love was conditional on my success. And what did you learn? Dad's voice was barely audible. I turned back to face them. I learned that you're good people with flawed priorities. You love me, but you also love the idea of success more than you love people. You measure worth in dollars and status instead of character and kindness. Maya, Mom stood up and took a step toward me. We never meant to make you feel unloved. I don't feel unloved, Mom. I feel disappointed. Yesterday you cut me off financially to teach me responsibility. Today you're asking for my help with a financial crisis. Do you see the irony? Dad cleared his throat. What happens now? That depends on what you want to happen. What do you mean? I sat back down, this time in the chair that positioned me facing all of them, the power position in the room. You have 2 choices. First option. I can restore all your accounts and credit lines exactly as they were. You can go back to your lives and I'll continue secretly funding your lifestyle while pretending to be your poor relative. Nothing changes. And the second option? Derek asked quietly. We start over. Honestly. I stop hiding my success and you stop treating me like a failure. I'll help you build genuine businesses and real wealth, but it will require work, humility, and treating me as an equal partner, not a charity case. Uncle Mike leaned forward. Maya, I don't understand. How did you build all this? Where did the initial money come from? Remember my college internship at Goldman Sachs? The one you all said was just filing papers? I wasn't filing papers. I was learning investment strategies and building relationships. When I graduated, I used my savings and a small loan to make my first real estate investment. I bought a foreclosed property in Brooklyn, renovated it, and sold it for triple what I paid. That's actually brilliant, Derek admitted. I repeated that process 12 times over 2 years, each time reinvesting the profits. By 2018, I had enough capital to start acquiring larger properties and making business investments. The photography was always my passion, but business was my talent. Why didn't you tell us? Mom asked. At first, I wanted to prove I could do it alone. Then when Dad's casino investment went bad, I realized I had an opportunity to help while also conducting an experiment. What kind of experiment? I wanted to see how you'd treat me if you thought I was unsuccessful versus how you'd treat me if you knew I was wealthy. The results were educational. Dad stood up and walked to the window, his back to the room. We failed your test, didn't we? It wasn't a test with pass or fail grades, Dad. It was research. And what I learned is that you're capable of growth. He turned around and I saw something in his expression I'd never seen before. Genuine humility. Maya, I owe you an apology. We all do. We judged you based on appearances and assumptions instead of really seeing who you are. The question is, what are you going to do with that information? Derek looked up from the documents he was still studying. Maya, if you're willing to help us start over honestly, I'd like to learn from you. Really learn. Not just take your money but understand how you think about business. Same here, Uncle Mike added. I've been running my construction company the same way for 15 years. Maybe it's time for new perspectives. Mom walked over and sat beside me on the couch. Honey, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you've accomplished, and I'm ashamed of how we've treated you. Can you forgive us? I looked around the room at my family, flawed, proud, but ultimately redeemable people who just learned a difficult lesson about assumptions and love. There's nothing to forgive, Mom. But there's a lot to rebuild. Where do we start? Dad asked. I pulled out my phone and opened my calendar app. We start with honesty. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., my office in Manhattan. You're going to see what I've actually built, and then we're going to figure out how to build something together. You have an office in Manhattan? Derek asked. I have the top 3 floors of the Meridian Tower. The building with my name on it. Dad sat down heavily in his chair. Maya, how did we miss this? How did we not see what you were building? Because you were looking at the wrong things. You saw the modest apartment, the old car, the simple lifestyle, and you assumed that was the whole picture. You never asked about my goals, my strategies, or my dreams. You just saw what fit your expectations. And now? Mom asked. Now we find out if we can build something better. Together. I stood up and gathered my purse and coat. I'm going home to prepare for tomorrow's meeting. You should do the same. And Dad? Yes. The heat in this house is controlled by a smart system I installed last year. I've turned it back up to a comfortable temperature. Your electricity and utilities will continue working normally. As I reached the door, Derek called out, Maya? Thank you. For everything. For saving us, for teaching us, and for giving us another chance. I paused at the threshold of my house, looking back at my family sitting in my living room, processing the revelation that their struggling artist daughter was actually their secret benefactor and business mentor. Don't thank me yet, I said with a smile. Wait until you see what we're going to build together. The drive back to Queens gave me time to process the day's events. My phone buzzed with text messages throughout the evening. Derek, I keep looking at those documents. I can't believe what you've accomplished. I'm nervous about tomorrow but excited to learn. Mom, I love you, Maya. I'm sorry it took a crisis for us to really see you. Dad, I've been thinking about what you said. You're right about our priorities. Tomorrow is a new beginning. Uncle Mike, Maya, I've been in construction for 20 years and I never thought to ask my niece for business advice. My mistake. Looking forward to learning from you. That night, I sat in my apartment. My deliberately modest apartment that had been my base of operations for building an empire, and planned our family's future. Real estate development projects that could utilize Uncle Mike's construction expertise. Consulting opportunities that could showcase Derek's actual skills rather than rely on my connections. Investment strategies that could teach Dad genuine wealth building instead of gambling on casino ventures. For 3 years, I'd been their invisible financial guardian. Starting tomorrow, I'd be their visible partner, mentor, and collaborator. The family that had cut me off financially on Sunday would be starting their real financial education on Wednesday. And for the first time in years, I was excited to see what we could build together.